What is the Rise Foundation? It's a charity that I founded back in 2009. I then, because in the early 2000s, after my mother passed away, she left us all a small amount of money, and some of you will know me as a singer, but she left us all a small amount of money, and I left school when I was 15. So I wanted to do something that would make her proud, so I decided I really wanted to get my head around addiction and the impact of addiction on the individual really, and how it can rob the individual of everything that's good in their lives. And nobody is a child, when they're a child, says, I want to grow up and be in addiction. I mean, it all comes from that trauma piece. So I went back to college, and I ended up working at a training in the Rugby Treatment Centre in Rathfarnham, and it was there that I started to work with families. And what would happen with family members is they would come in on a Tuesday into the group dynamic. There would be maybe 12 people sitting in a room who were trying to get into recovery from addiction. And the family would have to come in and talk about what it was like for the family living with them, and what they saw, and the impact on them, and the trauma, and all of that kind of stuff. And I realised that when I would meet them to prep them, they were so anxious and uptight and stressed and worried. And then they'd go into the group, and when they leave the group, they were more stressed and anxious, because they felt that they were kind of squealing on their loved one, even though they were actually giving their loved one a gift by talking about what it was like for them. So I decided then, and I watched a young woman walk out the gates of the Voluntary Treatment Centre, where two small kids whose partner was in for alcohol and gambling. And I remember looking at her and thinking, because she's so anxious and so uptight and so worried about her future. All the money was gone, and she was worried about relapse. And she couldn't be present to herself. She couldn't certainly be present to her two children because of the anxiety and the stress and the trauma. And that was really, I suppose, what inspired me to set up. At the time, the clinical director was Stephen Rowan at the time, and what I asked him, he just retired, and I said, will you come and help me? And I just met a young man there who said he just started with a group with 7 months going, and it reminded me of what it was like for me back in 2009, me and Stephen setting up a group, and it's grown from strength to strength, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So what does RISE? RISE stands for Recovery in a Safe Environment. We're focused on working towards helping family members to free themselves from the stress and the anxiety and worry of having a loved one in addiction, and to understand the nature of addiction and the profound effects it has on relationships. So I just say this to you, and I might be already in the presentation. I suppose this is not about getting the family member to understand their loved one. It's to understand the power of addiction and how insidious it is, without blaming their loved one, if that can make sense. You know what I mean? Because it's the addiction that's really the dark force here that we're all trying to get our heads around. And it's really the addiction that the family member, as well as the person who has the problem, but the family member has to take their power back, and that can pull into that really dark place of stress, anxiety, and trauma. So an alcohol, drug or gambling problem can destroy the individual, which it does, no doubt about it, but it also destroys relationships, and it can destroy the family unit, and it really can destroy, it breaks, just everything just falls apart when addiction presents itself within the family. We're a primary care organisation that supports family members in their feeling of powerlessness, the same way that the person in addiction feels powerless, the family member feels powerless. The heartache, the stress and the anxiety. So our philosophy is that it's important that the whole family step into recovery, and the addiction of one person impacts the whole family in a very destructive way. So even if their loved one, the person in addiction, steps into the recovery, family members need that recovery as well. And we're not a peer-to-peer support organisation, just to say that we have a team of highly trained counsellors that do their programmes, and I think we have here, we do one-to-one counselling, where we have a waiting list at the moment. We also have a 10-week, one night a week family programme, where we do a group educational and therapeutic programmes, where we deliver a lecture for the first part, and then we have the therapeutic process for the second part. We also have an aftercare programme, which we find is really important, because what people learn in the 10-week programme, after that then they have to put into practice on how to manage
I suppose, the impact on themselves. The 10-week non-residential family programme has been developed to create awareness and educate families about the impact of addiction. All our programmes, as I said, are run by a highly trained team of counsellors who bring a breadth of experience and compassion to their work. So they're already experienced and they want to understand the impact of families. So we bring them in, we train them. We have a few training therapists. They're already qualified, but they're training with us at the moment to understand the impact of addiction on the family member. So what we say to them is, and we talk a little bit about this, but what we say is, it's a little bit what like Al-Anon does, except what we do is a little bit more in-depth. So we try and help the family members understand that they can't control a loved one's behaviour, they didn't cause it, and they can't cure it. Now, that sounds kind of quite simple, but it's quite difficult for family members to get to that point, because somewhere in their heads they think they did, it's their fault. If I was a better parent, if I was a better partner, if I was a better, if I was a better child when I was a kid, somewhere in our psyche, they feel it's their fault and they played a role in it. So that's key in the philosophy that we do. The participants identify new healthy ways of coping with the impact of addiction and how destruction it is on all relationships. I'm going to show you a video now, and will you mind the time, because I could talk about this forever. This is a video that was sent to us by a wonderful school in Carlow, that these kids, so they were in transition year, and a few of their pals in the class were living with parents who had problems with alcohol, and they wanted to do something to highlight it. And this was the video, and then we asked them could we use it then to promote the work that we do at RISE. So it's quite impactful, and I hope you're able to hear, you're able to hear the sound, because it can be a little bit rough. How do I press play on this? Thank you. Maybe it's not working, is it? No. Hang on a second. It's not working, it's a pity. What I can do though is I can pass it on to you, if that's alright, Damien, and if people want to see it, or you can see it on our website anyway. So that's kind of good, because it means I have a bit more time to talk anyway. But you would have loved it, you would have been blown away by the video. So if you can go onto our website, just even look at the video and how powerful it is. And it's really, they were all only about 14 or 15, and it's just mind-blowing, because they talk about what it was like for them having parents who were lost in that really, I suppose, dark place of addiction. So, the impact of addiction on family, it really is very difficult to measure the impact, the stress, the anxiety. If you have somebody you love that's going down that route of self-destruct, and you're watching them and you know that they're going down that route of self-destruct, and you're trying to bring them back, it's nearly impossible. So the stress, the anxiety, the trauma, the worry, we deal with family members all the time who are so consumed with the anxiety and stress. They wake up in the morning thinking about it, they go through the day, they might get a little break if they have to go to work, they come home thinking about it, they go to bed at night, they wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. It's all consuming. It can have a huge physical, emotional, social, and spiritual consequences on the family. And I suppose that's what I want to highlight today is about the impact that it has physically. We've often had family members who come to us who have physical problems like irritable bowels, stomach problems, constant headaches, and then you can even go into the more stress-related cancers, heart, all of that stuff. Because when you're carrying that trauma all the time, it has to manifest itself. But then you have the emotional, the social, and the spiritual consequences. Family members who are affected by the impact of someone else's alcohol, drug, or gambling problem often feel so powerless that they go into that really dark place of depression. They're very confused, very hard for them to because thoughts are all over the place. Frustrated, angry, they get really, really angry. Hypervigilant and completely exhausted. The hypervigilance is something that we found is very, very prevalent with family members. So you're living, it's almost like they're living in a war zone, and it's not because their loved one is a bad person, it's only because they don't know when they're going to get the dreaded phone call. Have they killed themselves? Have they killed someone else? It's all of that huge anxiety, and it really brings people into a very dark place. Family members are often exposed to trauma due to the physical, emotional abuse that often coincides with addictive behaviour, and such trauma can especially be detrimental to young children and young adults who grow up with a parent who has an addiction problem. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and in a way the video would have kind of shown that as well. For those growing up with a parent who has an addiction problem, adverse childhood experiences are frequent, and the intergenerational trauma of harmful drinking or taking drugs can leave a deep negative impact, because the child will experience malignant shame. And what that means is if the child, sometimes it's called toxic shame, and when the child grows up with carrying that feeling of, well, it must be my fault, or maybe if I was a better child, or they have this constant thing in their head that they play a role in mommy or daddy's addiction. And when that happens, sometimes then, they'll either grow, and there has been evidence around this. I think it was Dr. Stephanie Brown, she runs in one of the universities, I can't remember which one, but in the US, she runs an alcohol program on the impact of alcohol. And she says that child will grow up with they'll either grow up marrying somebody with an alcohol problem, or having an alcohol problem. There's more chance that they will have an alcohol problem themselves. And that's why it's really important to break the stigma, to break the cycle of that intergenerational trauma. Parental neglect and parental negligence are also factors that impact young children and can have long-term effects. I know we kind of know that, but we just don't know to what extent. And that's something that we do need to really, really address. Mental health issues in family as a reaction to the impact of addiction. So these are the things: depression, unending crisis, I touched a little bit on that, feeling trapped, feeling numb, feeling defeated. In a way, it's almost a parallel process to what the person in addiction is feeling. You know what I mean? And that's what we talk about. It's that parallel process, that's the person in addiction is powerless, but they also feel trapped, they feel numb, they feel defeated, and the family member are carrying the same emotions around all of that. That's why it's so important that family recovery, the whole family are able to get that recovery. And even if their loved one doesn't step into recovery, often what we find is that when they step into their own recovery and they really take their power back and start to understand in a non-angry way, in a loving, caring way, they can still love their loved one, but to not get pulled in, I suppose, to what we call an unhealthy enmeshment because of the addiction. So they step back a little bit, and sometimes, not guaranteed, but sometimes the person will follow suit when they see their family members step in. It's not guaranteed, I can safely say that. Anxiety, for family members, fear of abandonment and rejection, fear of safety, fear of others' reaction. That's huge. There's huge shame in it for families. So they're afraid to ask for help because, again, they feel like they're squealing on their loved one. Life is very unpredictable. PTSD, as I said, that hypervigilance, that overreaction to triggers and reminders, the hypervigilance of the autonomic system. They go into that fight, flight or freeze, sorry, there's a wrong spelling there. Flashbacks, recurring negative thoughts. This is the impact on family. And I know you might think that's an exaggeration, but it's not. When family members come to us in Rise, that's where they are. They're in this place because they've nowhere else to go. They don't know what else to do. They're lost. They've tried everything. They don't know what else to do. So they think, I'm going mad, so I need help. So I'm going to really, how are we doing for time, Damien? Are we? I'm going to just go through very briefly a client story, one of our client stories. So she presented, as I mentioned earlier, very anxious, really in a panic. She was experiencing sleeplessness. She was worried about the children when in the addicted parents' care. So that was her anxiety, was the other parent who was in addiction, were they going to neglect, were they going to drive, you know. So there was this constant anxiety that she lived in. And she was really struggling to concentrate at work, was having a negative impact on her own mental health. Felt that she lost her ability to be fully present to her children, because when you're in that place, it's impossible to be present to your children, because you're living in that of anxiety. She was consumed with stress over the partner's addictive behaviour, and that was really hard for her. She was dealing at times with what we saw was, and a lot of our family members are dealing with post-traumatic stress caused by traumatic events, and a lot of the times there is traumatic events. You know, like for example, partner driving in a car, gone missing, injured, all of those. So you're constantly waiting for the phone call, and when you get it and then sometimes you get the phone call and it's actually okay, and then you can kind of, it's almost like a drug, to be honest with you. It's around the parallel process. You know, it's like living on your nerves all the time, and then when you get the phone call that everything's okay, you can kind of calm down. It's like the Valium that you take, or something to numb you out. So since engagement with us, the client learned to detach from the addictive behaviour, and I have to stress this, to not detach from the person that she cares about, even though they were separated at the time, I think, if I'm right, but she definitely felt calmer, she felt less angry, and that's huge, less anxious. So because when somebody's in that angry place, it's going to impact the kids. It definitely will impact the kids in some way. They pick up on energies, they're like little sponges. Not as alone, that's another huge one, because often family members feel very isolated and are afraid to talk to anybody about this because of the shame, and less confused. And this allowed her to be more present and to be positively engaged with the children, which helped her feel better about herself as a parent. So that was really amazing. I'm presuming this is a woman who may not be, so just to say that to you. So I actually wouldn't be presuming at all. But anyway, you know, so she definitely started to feel better to herself when she started to become more present to the children and give the children more time. That made her feel better about herself, or himself. They also learned to set healthier boundaries around the person with addiction, and also other family members whose behaviour might not be helpful. And sometimes, constantly, we have family members who, like, when they start putting boundaries in place and not getting pulled in to what we call the kind of toxic, maybe manipulative behaviour, other family members will say, why are you not doing this and why are you not doing that? You know, why can't you fix the problem, and why don't you do this? And often that can be quite destructive, and they feel guilty, and just, you know, it's constantly, the guilt is always there. But they learn, you know, family members often learn how to cope with all of that, kind of unhealthy enmeshment and attachment. They begin to practice self-care. That's huge. We ask our family members to start looking after themselves, do nice, because you lose your hobbies, you lose everything. You just become a kind of a human doing instead of a human being. Do you know what I mean? So you stop doing things for yourself because you're constantly waiting to hear what the dreaded phone call is. So we ask them to start doing nice things for themselves. They'll feel less consumed by their loved one in addiction, because that's what it is. It's almost like they're addicted to the person in addiction. That's the parallel process again. They become addicted to the person in addiction. So they start becoming, when they step back from it, it's a very uncomfortable feeling for them when they step back from that, actually, because they feel guilty. They have a yucky feeling in their stomach, they don't know how to do, they're waiting for, maybe I should be worried, I should be this, I should be that. But when we ask them to step back, they start to improve sleep and are experiencing better overall mental health. I just run through these really quickly. So these are I thought this was an idea, we did this ourselves, this was just really for our own selves to see the benefits. We did pre and post evaluations, and we wanted to see what people were getting from, some of these are just from counselling sessions, and some are from our 10-week family programme. Just wanted to get an idea on what people were feeling before, and then what people were feeling after they come to Rise. So these are this is what people said before they came to us. Addiction has had a huge impact on my life for the last 10 years. It impacts in so many ways, and no one else has a clue what's going on. It impacts my other relationships, Financially, it's a big taboo, a big dark secret, and I have to carry it around, which is hard. Same as the person in addiction, you know, they're lost in it as well. So that's, again, you know, addiction is such a powerful, insidious disorder or disease, or whatever word you want to put on it, but it's so insidious that the addiction wants to rob everything that's not only good in the person's life, it also wants to rob everything within the family dynamic as well. Forgive me for repeating myself, but constantly worried about him and the impact on the kids. It's taken over my life, and the constant worry has got me down. I've lost me, and I also has had financial impact on the family. Mental torture the last few years, walking on eggshells all the time. That's really hard when you're walking on eggshells because you don't know what way to manage something, what to say. I don't want to upset them because then they might run out the door and start drinking again. So you're walking on eggshells. Toxic for me and the kids, and has brought a lot of financial stress, extreme anxiety, helplessness, frustration, overwhelmed with fears. Find it's very hard not to dwell on how addiction has affected my family. I find it hard to explain to a friend how complicated it can be. It's very hard because of the shame. You know, and somewhere again in it all you think you're letting the family down by talking about it, or you're letting your loved one down, or you're letting yourself down. I feel it consumes me. So that's her saying, or him saying, it's just taken over everything in my life. It's exhausting, it takes a lot of time physically and mentally. It impacts my mental health. I've had suicide ideation and needed medication to help. That's where the powerlessness brings you. The same way as the person in addiction feels powerless, the family member feels powerless. I feel not good enough. It's a constant battle. I'm filled with worry, heartbreaking. It's impacted other things in my life, including my marriage, and I blame myself. That's definitely from a parent. So what happens say from a parent's point of view is that they're so consumed with their adult child who might be in addiction that they read their own relationship with their partner starts to really, I suppose, fall apart. Life is an emotional roller coaster. Loneliness and anger feature. This last week has been calm. The week before was bad, so the answers would have been worse. It's a roller coaster of ups and downs, always insecurity and ups and downs. Extra responsibility to carry as he's not available to help with house or kids, expectations that you can manage all on your own. And that's their own expectations. You know, that's their own expectations that they feel they have to manage all on their own. So that's the pre, and these are the post. New understanding and being listened to in a non-judgmental way. So again, for the first time, family members come to Rise and we're only talking about what it's like for them. We're not actually talking, because sometimes everything is centered around the person in addiction. So it's for the first time that they can be a bit uncomfortable with it, actually starting to talk about themselves, to be honest with you, because they're so used to only ever talking about their loved one. A lot more at ease, better understanding about myself and my own behaviour. Now there's unhealthy behaviours for the family member as well, that sometimes, because family members don't see themselves as victims, and I think that's really important, or maybe sometimes they can, but it's really important that they look at what unhealthy behaviours they might have because of the trauma, because of, you know, the hypervigilance and all of that. We react in a way that maybe we need to step back from and look at. Awareness of my participation in enabling the addiction, the caretaker role, the importance of time out for myself. We run lectures on family roles in addiction and what happens and the different roles that sometimes we can take over, and that's where the awareness comes in there. Awareness of addiction and coping mechanisms, understanding you're not alone, again, it's huge. Talk to somebody who understands and can help me understand the impact of addiction. And again, you see, none of this is about blaming their loved one. We're very, very focused on that. Might sound really strange to you, actually, but this is not about blaming their loved one. We try and give them an understanding of the power of addiction and how it robs people of good stuff. Learning about the dance of addiction and avoiding the dance floor. So that's not getting pulled into, I suppose, the game playing or the manipulation. or whatever. And we always say to people that when somebody is in addiction, it's because the manipulation comes because they love the addiction so much that they have to manipulate to survive. Not taking the blame or thinking the situation has nothing to do with me. Learning about boundaries. We're nearly finished. The overview of the situation from different perspectives. And learning I was not the author of everything that happened in life. So that's really big. It's not their fault, and it wasn't. I didn't make this happen. Proved my life and strengthened me and made me stronger. My understanding of addiction has helped me, and learning not to go on the dance floor has taken the focus off a loved one. It's really strange for them. Feeling hard and a better understanding of addiction. To speak to someone who understands was very helpful to me, as no one understands. Learning to understand addiction, so I'm not feeling I'm losing my mind. Being able to talk, ask questions, and talk through real life scenarios. Making me see things I'm only hurting myself, and completely understand that my partner's addiction is completely out of my control. And that's really hard, because sometimes family members really do try and go in there and control and fix, and none of it works. How are we doing for time? Are we alright? So here's a little bit about recovery from family members, and this is the stuff that we focus on. So there's so much, because each family member is so different. Every single individual that has come into us, their story is different. There's different levels of addiction, there's different types of addiction, there's different relationships. So it's so different, but it's very hard to put it all into one kind of slide, what recovery means. But the key piece is strong boundaries and self-care, and that's very important going forward, understanding what the boundaries are, and how to put boundaries in a kind, loving way, that doesn't push their loved one away, but also it's just about empowering themselves, really. That's really what's important. How do you empower yourself? And then that self-care piece. We found that family members respond very well to the psychoeducational approach to family recovery, especially if combined with long-term therapeutic support, including individual counselling. So what we find is that if somebody comes to us for counselling, they do a few sessions with us, then they do the 10-week family programme, and then they continue on with the aftercare. We see really fantastic results for the family member. Honestly, it's mind-blowing. I feel so privileged to be working in this role. I love the Rise Foundation. I love working with the families. But when you start seeing families really getting it, it really is a privilege to be working in this area. So obviously it's really important. The first step is asking for help. And that's not easy, I'll be honest with you, for family members, because of the shame. They find it very, very difficult. So a lot of our family members who come to us are in that place of absolute, the end of the tether, nowhere else to go, please help me. But they've all come. Once they come to Rise, that's the first step. Or they might go to Al-Anon, or they might go to Nar-Anon, and that's really important. What does one recover? Their health, same as the person in addiction when they step into recovery. Health, integrity, dignity, relationships, career, hopes and dreams. Exactly the same as the person who stepped into recovery from addiction. It's the same for the family members. That's what they recover. And that's what we see when they really embrace the programme. How they show up, be aware, get really good information, to listen actively to others and ask for help, and then the self-care piece, and the boundaries should be in there as well, understanding boundaries. I think I've done really well on time there. Would I be right in saying that? So that's it really. Check out the website for the video if you can. We are now, I just want to say this to you, all of our stuff is all online. What we found was it was easier for us to have a reach around the country. We used to do it just based in Dublin, but now we find that since we went online, we're able to, we had one woman, I'll just briefly say this before I go, that used to travel from the very, very, very top of Donegal, and she would travel 5 hours on a bus every Thursday to come down to the Rise programme, stay overnight with a friend and travel back on the Friday. But people don't have to do that now. All our counselling is all online. Our programs are all online, and even our aftercare is online. And it's work. I was anxious about it during COVID that it wouldn't work, but it's working really, really well, and we're really surprised at the outcomes. And all of those outcomes were all from online. The pre and post evaluations was all from online as well. So check out the website. We're all over the country. We're training up a young woman who's just finished now. She's done her psychotherapy course. She's finished, she's qualified, and she lives up here in North Antrim, and hopefully we'll be able to expand more services and bring more service to all over the country as well. So thanks a million, everybody.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I've spoken to Francis before just about covering the country. And I think sort of, yeah, you've given an answer, just covering the whole of the country.
Yeah.
It's a Dublin based, but sort of using the internet and we've been able to expand that.
Yeah, so it was Dublin based, and we only did our programmes in Angel Street in Dublin. But then since COVID, it really was a gift, COVID was. Initially we didn't run services probably for the first 9 months of COVID. And we didn't know what to do, and we had to finish programmes, go halfway through programmes, and it was just a disaster. We were, at that point, Dublin, and we did Dundalk, and kind of the northeast region, Drogheda, and that, but now we're thankfully able to reach everywhere, all over the country, and at the moment we have 4 programmes, 4 10-week family programmes running. So we have 2 of a Monday night, 1 of a Tuesday, 1 of a Wednesday. We have about 6, 7 therapists now who are doing our online counselling. And then we have 2, Stephen Rowan, who was the clinical director, he kind of runs our aftercare programme along with another one of our therapists. So we have 3 aftercare programmes running at the moment. So yeah, it's really, really busy.
So just on a personal note, in terms of the People's Kitchen, Francis, can I thank you for your support over the years. Francis was our first patron when we were a fledgling soup kitchen. She's made time this morning to drop a hand to come up from Dublin. She lets us collect her gigs. It's just been a fantastic support. She met us in the Oireachtas in between sort of her important sort of parliamentary work on there. Also want to say, Francis, thank you so much for your support over the years.